Chapter 3 Hilltop Roadhouse, Saturday, December 10th. Leonardo Freeman sat in his office chair, typing quietly on his keyboard, placing next week's truck order for the Roadhouse on his computer. The hum of the restaurant sounded through the slightly cracked office door. He could hear laughing from patrons sitting at the bar, local men and women drinking beer and talking loudly, most of them regulars. He could tell from the sound of it. The shouting voices of the cooks working in the kitchen and wait staff calling back orders. After over 15 years, he knew the sounds and voices of the Roadhouse, inside and out. The radio played beside him, crackling with the sound of a talk show host covering this week's financial cap. It's not looking good, folks. Just as I predicted, the Dow Jones and S&P are way down, over 400 points. Plus the Vanguard and Schwab S&P are also close behind them, he said cheerily. After stating the fact, the host chuckled with a booming laugh. Ah, ha, ha. I've been telling you all along, US of A is a fuming runaway locomotive headed straight for the crash. The guy sounded like he was enjoying the news. With his deep, raspy voice, he spoke again. Boom! It's truly inevitable, and that I cannot deny. The only thing we can do now is strap on the life jacket before this mega-Titanic sinks. The voice paused, and it sounded like the radio host was drinking water. Next up, we'll take a call from a listener in Seattle, Washington. Kyle, you're live on air with us. Hello. A slight static sounded. Hi, thank you for having me on. I've been a long-time listener for years. It's an honor to finally talk to you, although right now I'm calling with some seriously bad news. The caller paused for a moment. See, I'm a truck driver, and I won't say for what company, though we are a large one. They had a meeting just recently telling us guys that our fuel supplier only has 7 days worth of diesel fuel left, and they don't know when they'll get another shipment. If they cannot secure another delivery, then we're left with filling at J-flies and pilot stations to top up. I'll tell you now, if we can't secure fuel, it's highly doubtful they'll be able to either. The show host responded a little less enthusiastically. Yes, I believe what you're saying is true, and folks, if you've been listening to previous episodes, you know we've been covering this diesel fuel shortage recently. The world government at large is playing you. There isn't a shortage like they're explaining it to us. He took a moment's pause, and you could hear an audible exhalation of breath in the radio microphone. Then, with a loud, rumbling voice, it's a man-made, manufactured shortage. We, the people, need to wake up. No diesel fuel means no deliveries, no groceries, folks. They want you to starve. Diesel trucks deliver gasoline, too. They're trying to cut you off from travel. If you don't know already, to them, you're useless eaters. They want you to own nothing and be happy. Stock up on the commodities and goods now while you can, because the end is near. Don't forget, you heard it here first. Stay in prayer, folks, and also stay tuned, because we'll be right back after a short commercial break. The commercial short started blaring some vitamin sales, and Leo reached to dial down the volume. He liked this radio show, despite how ramped up the guy got. He took all the information in with a grain of salt, and through the years it benefited him well. Besides radio shows, he listened to a lot of Bible studies on YouTube. Parable of the Vineyard and Kingdom in Context taught him a lot when it came to understanding the context of the scripture and how he could apply it properly to everyday life. The world, as a whole, was a modern-day Babylon, secretly already acting as a one-world government. They'd all acted together for years, yet still putting on a front as sovereign nations and countries. The verifying degrees of freedom in each country differed, yet it was hard to miss the world leaders meeting with NATO and the United Nations. Then each of the most major presidents and dictators gathered together to then solemnly swear an oath underneath the 6-armed Hindu Shiva statue, to swear a vow and pledge in line with the World Economic Forum. Not long afterwards, they all got together again to redo the 10 Commandments in their own wisdom, to align with a new oath for climate change. The Pope himself joined them on Mount Sinai, the same place the biblical scripture tells us Moses went up to receive the Holy 10 Commandments from the Most High God himself. It was a fallen and sadly lost world in today's day and age. The purpose God had given him fueled Leonardo, and he made every day a chance to shine as the light of Christ in today's gloomy pagan culture. Just listening to the latest hit on the radio was evidence of that. He had some employees whom he could observe every day being affected majorly by the music they choose to listen to alone, not to mention all the other worldly influence they had in their daily lives, with streaming television shows and podcasts. Leonardo knew that despite all the sadness and despair in this world, it was only temporary until every tear would be wiped away, and all sorrows would be gone forever. Finally, then, there would be only happiness and joy. When Christ, our Messiah and Savior Jesus, returned in the great day of our Lord, Leonardo knew he would be judged for his sin. He never denied that he himself was a sinner, yet embraced the fact that only through Jesus Yeshua was he washed clean. Through repentance and belief, he made it his mission in life to serve God and help others. Being part owner now of the Hillside Roadhouse, while Mr. and Mrs. Gardner stepped down in their well-earned retirement. He knew it was a blessing, so Leonardo made sure to be a good steward of the fact. Just as he was finishing up inventory on the computer, a small knock came at his office door. It was only slightly shut, so he knew the knock was a courtesy. "Yes, come in," he said. The first thing he saw was a full round belly, with stretching fabric covering it, announcing her entrance. Sadie entered, her pale face glowing bright under the white office lights. She was 7 months pregnant, and still was an excellent, hard-working waitress for the Hilltop Roadhouse. When Sadie had told Leo she was pregnant, he had offered her 5 months paid maternity leave, promising her she could take it whenever she felt necessary. She'd spent 4 years with Hilltop, and Leo felt she had earned it. She was waiting until the last moment to take it. He knew her boyfriend wasn't the stand-up guy she'd made him out to be from the brief conversations they'd had when talking about her baby's dad. He knew they weren't married. Sadie was private about her relationship. She didn't have an engagement ring on her finger. "Mr. Freeman, I think my table is going to dine and dash. They're acting drunk or something. They've been to the restrooms a bunch of times. They're disturbing the other tables next to them. I'm about to drop off their bill, but I wanted to tell you what's going on." Leo raised an eyebrow at this. The past years he'd seen dine and dashing increase. The homeless had come in and learned to be respectful and courteous, to eat and drink, biding their time to be discreet and slip out the door, to say please and thank you and act like they had every intention of paying their bill, despite being clothed in multiple layers of dirty clothes. Most of them ordering modest meals, not high-priced steaks, just a plain cheeseburger and french fries, showing appreciation and commenting how good the food was. Legally, Leonardo Freeman could not instruct his waiters and waitresses to deny the services based off the sole appearance of what they were wearing, or else pay a hefty lawsuit in this day and age for discrimination. He instructed his staff to just use their best discernment in case-to-case circumstances. He inhaled a breath and pushed himself up from his desk chair. "Thanks, Sadie. I'll go have a look. Which table was it, you said?" "It's table 43, she responded. "All right, I'll handle it. You go take care of your tables." Sadie went to the back area where the servers picked up the food that was ready to be delivered to the customers. She took out her cell phone and glanced to see if any new text message was there, waiting to be read. The glow of the phone's light lit up her face, shining bright against her brown hair pulled back neatly into a large bun, set symmetrically on top of her head. The beginning of a tear started to well in her eye, and the feeling of a knot in her stomach ached at her. There was no new message. Disappointed, she fought against the internal feelings of despair. Using the back of her hand, she quickly wiped away at her face, and then forcefully formed her expression into a happy one with a small grin. Faking it well, pushing back the sorrow eating at her heart. She was at work, and this mess stirring within her could wait until later, when she was at home. She knew the storm of emotions building inside her would finally overwhelm her weak restraint, but Sadie was strong, and until then she'd keep her private life to herself. Pulling her shoulders back to the round of her pregnant stomach, protruding outwards, she grabbed a few plated dinners from the heated counter and walked out confidently to her table. Through the years of working at Hilltop Roadhouse, Leonardo had, out of necessity, learned to keep everyone calm in potentially messy situations. From a customer having one too many drinks and wanting to drive home, to domestic disputes, his plan was to de-escalate, so that the other customers and families could enjoy their evenings. One particular night, two men who were especially inebriated couldn't put their egos aside and had insisted on a brawl, which he and one of the cooks had to break up. If he remembered correctly, it was over a girl. The fight was brought to an end quickly. The cook suffered a bloody nose from an elbow being swung back, poised for a punch. They got the two men separated and ushered outside. Up until now, that was the worst the restaurant had seen. Leonardo made his way out of his office and past the mahogany wood bar top. Customers sat on their stools and with their drinks in hand. Behind them, glasses and liquor bottles sat neatly organized next to a mirrored backdrop. Catchy country tunes played on the radio as servers bustled about bringing food and drink to their tables. The atmosphere at the Roadhouse was lively, but the customers knew that their visit promised a calm and relaxing evening for their family dinner. So when a disturbance did happen, Leonardo did his best to resolve it peacefully. As he approached table 43, he saw a frizzy-haired woman in a tattered dress frantically searching through her large bag, the contents of which were scattered among the table along with 3 plates of steak and baked potato dinners. A disheveled-looking man sat across from her, stooped over his cell phone, seemingly frozen in place, eyelids mostly shut. He was clearly nodding out while using his phone. Leo looked up to see a third man exit the bathroom, wide-eyed with a shaggy beard, taking over-exaggerated steps, arms swinging wildly as he walked. They all seemed dirty. The wide-eyed man made his way back to the table. Customers sat at nearby tables were stealing glances at the sporadic trio. The third man took his seat and started going through his pockets as if looking for something. As Leo approached them, he asked, "Good evening. How was your dinner tonight?" Leo stood tall with a straight posture, his dark hair and strong features standing out under the light, the length of his beard reaching down toward his blue flannel button-up shirt, contrasting against his lightly tanned skin. The man slouched over didn't move, but the other man and the woman next to him looked up in response. The woman smiled menacingly, presenting some brown, decaying teeth. Something about the look in her eye was wrong. And then she spoke. "Are you the manager? 'Cause I need the manager." When she said this, her voice didn't seem to match her looks. The iris of her eyes were very dark, and in the center, her pupils seemed an impossible shade of black. "I am the manager. How can I help you?" Leo promptly responded, as Sadie passed by him, attending to her other tables. "We won't be paying for this. Your pretty little waitress over there spit in my food." Hearing this, Leonardo noticed Sadie look in the table's direction, but being in the middle of taking a new order, only glanced over quickly, giving Leo a "what the heck" expression. Leonardo looked over the table and the plates and could see mostly everything had been eaten. Then, scanning the contents of the bag lady's purse everywhere, he knew this woman wasn't in her right mind, though there was, in fact, a pool of spit on the corner of her plate. She spoke loudly, and her comments were easily heard by other patrons. They all started sneaking glances at the problematic table. It wasn't long before Sadie herself came to join Leo in the confrontation. "Ma'am, I would never do that. That's absolutely not true," Sadie stated incredulously. The bag woman stood up at this, knocking a few random purse items from the table. They clattered onto the ground as she got up. She was tall, and a bad body odor wafted from her dirty clothes. "Excuse me?" she said angrily. "Shut your mouth, you dirty tramp. I wasn't talking to you." The woman was steaming and glared into Sadie's eyes. You think just because you have a pretty little face that you're any better than me? Sadie took an involuntary step backwards and reflexively guarded her pregnant belly with her arms. That's enough, Leo said, stepping in between them, but the crazed woman continued talking to Sadie. I know your kind, young and beautiful, used to getting everything you want. Everyone thinks you're so sweet and honest, but I can see through you, girl. You're just a nasty trick with no ring on her finger. Your baby daddy will run off soon if he hasn't already. The man who was stooped over woke now at the commotion. His frantic counterpart started scooping things off the table and shoving them into his pockets. Phones and charger cords, lighters, and a few scattered dollars, some of which were rolled up tight. The groggy man put his hand on the woman's shoulder, and she waved him off, stepping closer to Leonardo. Now, I'm telling you, the service was inadequate, sir, and this girl spit in my food. Now, who are you going to believe? A customer or some whore who got knocked up before marriage? Leo spoke with authority. Ma'am, you all need to leave now. I won't tolerate you speaking to my employees that way. Now go. He ushered them with his arms, forcing the trio out toward the front door. Everyone seated was now watching indiscriminately, some of which were enjoying the show based off the looks on their face. He grabbed the one who was nodding out by the shoulder and physically moved him along faster. When they got close to the entrance, the customer started to actually applaud, clapping and shouting with a couple whoop sounding off. Leo heard someone yell, Yeah, take out the trash, Freeman. Way to go, said another. When they all were finally out the doors, Sadie, who stood next to Leonardo, added, Now don't come back. And with that final comment, the bag lady stopped and turned, a cold blank look on her face. That's it, you filthy slut, I'll show you. Suddenly, with an unexpected speed, she brought her hand out of her bag, lunging quickly toward Sadie's round belly. Leonardo saw a glint flash from the thin silver blade in her hand. With the precious few seconds he had to react, he dove in between them, feeling a sharp pain brought to his arm. Then he shoved the woman away. She stumbled backwards and almost fell, when her partner caught her by the waist and yelled, Come on, Barb, let's leave. The three sped off out of sight, yelling departing insults. A few loyal local patrons surrounded Leo, with Sadie nearby. She stood holding her thin arms around herself, looking as if she was about to cry. When a voice with a southern accent sounded as Max spoke loud, Freeman, you just saved this little girl right here. Others agreed audibly, and a small chattering started. Rebecca, the bartender, came up and hugged Sadie. Reacting to the affection, Sadie turned and started to sob quietly into her shoulder. Leonardo looked down at his arm as he felt a warm, wet sensation make its way down to his wrist. A dark red stain began to appear through his sleeve. Thanks, Mac. Excuse me, I've got to wrap this up. Do me a favor and call the sheriff so we can make a report while I take care of this. Putting pressure on his arm, he turned to Sadie. Sadie, are you okay? He asked. She looked up from Rebecca's shoulder. With teary eyes, cheeks flushed red, she nodded yes. All right, good, he responded. As Leo made his way past the crowd into his back office, where he knew a first aid kit was ready and waiting, he hoped he didn't catch an infection from the woman's dirty knife. Once he got back into his office, he pulled out a bottom drawer and retrieved a black Molly pouch he kept as his personal first aid kit. Leo kept one in all the important places, his home, truck, and workplace. The restaurant had first aid kits already, but his was a bit better prepared. He selected a spray bottle with rubbing alcohol and started to douse the wound with a liberal amount. It stung, but he knew it was necessary. Once the blood was cleared, he could see the cut wasn't so bad. Before he finished, he applied antibiotic ointment onto the bandage and wrapped it firmly to his forearm. When Sadie entered the room, Leonardo could see that her face looked grief-stricken. Mr. Freeman, I'm so sorry. Sadie's voice was shaky when she spoke, her eyes wet and brimming with new tears. Leo watched as the girl, bearing the weight of her round, pregnant belly, eased herself into the chair across from him. You don't have to be sorry for anything. That woman was out of her mind. You did nothing wrong at all, Sadie, he responded warmly. When he saw her face scrunch up and turn a bit redder, he could tell she was trying to stop from crying anymore, so he continued. I'm just glad we're all okay. That could have ended badly, Leo said with a sigh. When Sadie couldn't hold it back any longer, she let loose with a quiet sob, tears rolling down her face. Leo got up and sat in the seat next to hers, putting a hand on her heaving shoulders. No, that's just it, Mr. Freeman. You don't understand. I did do something wrong. If I would have just kept my mouth shut and not said anything to that lady, nobody would have gotten hurt, she stammered, and she looked at the white bandage wrapping Leo's arm, a slight red tint apparent. I get worked up, and I just can't help what I say sometimes, but everything that woman was saying, it was like she knew somehow. I don't get how, but everything she said, it was true. Sadie paused, inhaling with short, rapid breaths, crying a little still, then mustering up some control. It was like she was psychic or something. That part about my baby's daddy leaving, my boyfriend Josh, he left me a note on the table last night. The note said he was leaving to Florida to live with some gamer girl he plays online with. He took all of our savings and left a $50 bill with a note saying he'd send money to help with the baby once it was born. She looked Leo in the eyes and he saw her wet tears run her mascara. She furrowed her thin brows in anger as she continued. It wasn't even his money. I paid all the bills and rent because he was always looking for the right job. She spoke the last part with air quotations. He promised to get a job before the baby was born, but all he did was play the game with that homewrecker, she said with all the passion of a woman's fury, getting more heated now. Sadie took a deep breath and exhaled loudly, wiping the tear trails from her face, leaving black smudges. The note was short, and he said he thought we just weren't on the same page or on the same life path. He couldn't ignore the signs, and we weren't written in the stars. He was obsessed with astrology. He ripped out last night's horoscope and paper-clipped it to the note, too. It said, Scorpio, have a year like never before. Be bold and take the leap. The note said Laura, the gamer girl, confirmed it when she read him his tarot cards that night. They'd always stay up late playing matches together, laughing and smoking weed, playing online, while I was out working my ass off, waiting tables, pregnant with his child. Sadie held her belly protectively when saying this, pausing in her explanation for a second, then coldly she continued. I found pictures of her on his phone, more than once, and when I confronted him, he denied it. He pleaded it didn't matter. He said that she was way across the country and it was nothing. She meant nothing to him. Only I did. I was here with him in real life. I'm the mother of his child. He loved me, or so he promised. Sadie went silent, then wiped away one last solitary tear from her soft cheek, pulled her shoulders back, and sitting up straight now, willed herself back into full composure again. My grandma always told me not to be joined to a man unequally yoked, and for a long time I didn't know what that meant. She warned me that Josh was a no-good waste and a lazy man, but every promise he made me, every time he made me laugh, I was drawn to him. I was comfortable with him. I trusted him. I believed in him. We've been together since middle school. I fell for every excuse. He dreamed of making it as a big gamer for us. Then she spoke with a calm sincerity. Now I know it was all a lie. Damn Josh took $800 of my savings and bought a one-way plane ticket to St. Petersburg, Florida to be with his real lover, sweet little Laura, that makeup-addled YouTuber dancing in videos and hypnotizing him with her bright color skirts and caked foundation for perfect skin. I should have listened to my grandma. And now here I am. Seeming to be done with her rant, Sadie stood, collecting the bandage wrappers from Leonardo's desk in her hand, and then walked over to throw them in the trash. Sadie. Leo cleared his throat. I'm relieved you're finally sharing this with me. It sounds like you're in a tough situation, but I want you to remember that you still have 5 months paid maternity leave. Sadie slumped in her chair. Some of the fight had left her. Thank you, Mr. Freeman. I'm sorry to put this on you. I just wish my relationship with Josh had been like you and your wife Autumn. Every time Autumn comes in here with your daughter Kenzie, you guys look like such a happy family. I just wish we could have worked through things, me and Josh. Our child deserves that kind of family. Happy and loving each other, and now I don't think we'll have anything close to that. When I see you and your family seemingly so perfect together, I don't know how you do it, Sadie said solemnly, her face slack with a sad expression, her pale, slender arm holding the bump of her pregnant belly. I wish Josh and I could have been like that, she added, looking up at Leonardo. Leo could visually see the hurt in Sadie's eyes, still a little teary and red. He knew what he had to say to her and did his best to organize the thoughts in his mind. He needed to tell her this the right way. Leo got up and walked back to the chair behind his desk. Then he told her, Autumn and I do our best to have a marriage that honors God. We love God and practice His commandments. That's our foundation as a family. We've been through some pretty tough times. Leo flipped open the Bible sitting on his desk and efficiently paged to the verse he wanted, then read aloud. John 16:33. These things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. You see, God tells us we will have troubles and tribulations in this life, but that through Him and His Son, Jesus Christ, we will have peace, even in the hard times. Leo turned to another page, then read aloud again. Matthew 7:24 through 27. Build on the rock. Therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. But everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. Leo explained, when you have trouble and lean on God for the answers to get through it, He promises comfort through the trial. Corinthians 1:4, who comforts us in all our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort those who are in any trouble, with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. Sadie was listening intently to Leonardo, and her thoughts went to her time as a child visiting church with her grandma on the weekend. Until her mom and dad moved her family to northern Arizona. After that, she never went anymore. Her parents weren't really believing people, only her grandma. Now she called and would talk with her grandma several times a week, and the advice she gave Sadie was always biblical, like warning her not to be involved with Josh, who was a non-believer, and how that meant they were unequally yoked. Sadie hadn't opened a Bible in years, but she did believe in God, and listened to what her grandma told her. She always thought that it was enough until now. She felt her whole life crumbling apart. Leonardo was making sense, and she desperately wanted a sense of peace in her current situation. She was beginning to think that the Bible really did have practical ways within the world that she could apply to her everyday life. She needed that comfort with how she felt so unnerved and anxious about the future, also deeply sad about Josh leaving her. "Sadie, I know you've got a lot of work to work through and to think about," Leonardo stated plainly. "Go ahead and take off the rest of the night, and if you want, we can cover a few of your shifts for the next few days to give you some rest. After a crazed lady tried to attack you, you've also got these family matters to sort through. It's a lot to process. Pray on it, Sadie." She exhaled at that. She really did need a rest. Leonardo continued, "You're a good girl. Sorry this is happening to you. The world is a fallen place, but you're strong and you can make it. I know it." Leonardo sat up and moved to offer out a hand to help Sadie out of her seat. She took it and pried herself up. "Thank you, Mr. Freeman. What you said really gave me so much to think about. I guess I'll try praying on it when I'm home tonight. I have an old Bible in my dresser drawer somewhere, too. I'm going to transfer my table tickets to Rebecca and head out. I really appreciate it. That psycho lady didn't bother me half as much as my situation at home is, strangely. Thank you for stepping in to protect me. I really can't thank you enough. I mean it," Sadie said, looking up at Leonardo. He put one arm around her shoulders and gave her a firm squeeze. Sadie side-hugged him back and made her way out of the office, with a bit more confidence that things just might work out okay. Walking out, she checked her cell phone for messages from Josh one last time. The glow of the screen lit up her face as she navigated the menus, still finding nothing. But it didn't bother her as much now. Sadie was determined to find the piece Mr. Freeman was reading about. She'd seen it firsthand in him and his family and knew it was real. She was going to go home and give her grandmother a call, then tell her the truth about what happened. Sadie was ready to start the next chapter in her life, with or without Josh. She was going home to dig out that old Bible and finally see what God had to offer her. Sadie smiled warmly at the thought. Leonardo sat back in his office chair, feeling good about the conversation with Sadie. He was just about to turn up his radio show again when his cell phone rang. Looking at the caller ID, it was his brother George. Leonardo and George had always been close growing up, other than the natural competition of a strong sibling rivalry. Now, as adults, they were just as close and confided in one another. Leonardo and George had always been close growing up. Other than that, the natural competition of a strong sibling rivalry. Now, as adults, they were just as close and confided in one another. Though with families of their own, it was more difficult to get together. So a handful of times out of the year, they made it a priority to get the families together to spend some quality time with one another, including special occasions. At the very least, they'd call and have conversations through the week. Both were on the same page spiritually and paid attention to the political climate when it would affect their families. Like the diesel shortage and rising inflation for all goods, even though prices had been on the rise now for some time. This potential diesel fuel crisis could really put some hurt on everyone, whether they knew it or not. Leonardo answered. "Hey, bro, I'm glad you called. How's the family?" "Hey, Leo, they're all doing good, thanks. Evelyn's doing a lot better since we're all officially moved into the new house. I think the space, peace, and quiet are doing her some good ever since what happened. Plus, the fence all around the property adds a good security aspect." George paused for a moment and then continued. "It's still hard to believe she was attacked in her own front yard. I was just inside for 1 second, setting the groceries down. When lady started barking, I ran outside, saw that lowlife had hit her, snatched her purse, and was running away already. Evelyn was in a daze on the ground, so I went to make sure she was okay. Otherwise, I would have drawn on him. That creep got her pistol that was in her purse, too." George ended his story with, I'm just glad she's okay. Leonardo had heard this story before, right after it happened, but he could tell it was still bothering his brother a lot. George was protective over his family, just as Leonardo was himself. So he listened intently again to the details of it. He thought maybe talking about it was therapeutic for George, and he wanted to be there for his brother when he could. Listening was the least he could do. Also, he knew George would raise his eyebrows in surprise to the story he was about to share of the restaurant tonight. Yeah, bro, you're definitely blessed everyone's still safe and healthy. God's watching out for you, even though it's bad what happened. The city's getting worse. You got out just in time. Crime is happening more often. Even right here at the restaurant tonight, we had a pretty close call. Leonardo continued about the confrontation earlier, from the beginning, until he reached the part where he stopped the woman from slashing Sadie with a knife. It was like the woman had a demon possession. I could see it in her eyes when I talked to her. They were dark and disturbed. I could sense a very real evil right away. I mean, what kind of psychopath tries to stab a pregnant girl? He finished. It's a spiritual war we're fighting against. The principalities of darkness. It's physical, too. Some of the people are oppressed with unclean spirits. Some of them have been heavily oppressed for years. Then look what they do. They're crazy. With a reprobate mind, some of them will do anything, said George confidently. The brothers talked a while longer, both agreeing the state of things were bad, though there was still a lot of good and beautiful things in this world, with good people who still had a strong sense of morality. I've got to get going here, but before I do, I wanted to invite you and Autumn and Kenzie up to the new house for Christmas Eve. Mom and Dad are coming too. You can plan to stay over in the extra bedrooms. I know it's a bit of a drive, but the house has a lot more space. It'll be good for the kids to spend time with their grandparents, George said cheerily. Sure, sounds like a good plan. I think Evelyn already called Autumn and invited us earlier today. She texted me and mentioned it, but yeah, it'd be good to see Mom and Dad and finally the new place. Plan on it. We'll see you then. Talk to you later, bro. Leonardo responded warmly.